What's up guys, you're watching Li-Fi TCG. Got a quick video for you today on this MTG Pauper deck, Blue-White Familiars. So I've got quite a lot of views and subs recently from my Flesh and Blood videos, so hopefully if you're interested in Flesh and Blood you're not too upset about this notification, but I've been spending my store credit from my MTG winnings on Flesh and Blood cards, so you're going to get a new update soon on what's happening in that game. But this deck is what I used this weekend recently to top 4 a local paper tournament in my city, Auckland, New Zealand. Yeah, it was a really easy tournament. I never lost a game. So I won like 4 rounds of Swiss in a row into the top 8, and then won in the top 8, and then it was late and everybody just wanted to go home, so I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And under the semi-final match I would have had to play against Turbo Fog again, which I'm not really that interested in doing anyway. So, but yeah, I'll just talk a bit about the list. So this is pretty similar to the list that I talked about in the previous video on the deck. The biggest thing is the 4 Brainstorm instead of playing Preordain. Brainstorm's just such a sick card. It's so good in this deck. You have the shuffle effects from your fetch lands, kind of fetch lands, not real fetch lands, but pauper fetch lands. You have shuffle effects from this. You can shuffle your deck from this. You have quite a few ways to do that. And also, you always have extra cards to put back with Brainstorm. It's very easy to do. Like in the late game, your deck just draws a ton of cards anyway. You have extra lands that you pick up with your Azorius Chancery, so yeah, Brainstorm's just a super nice card for the deck. I think it's a really good choice. So yeah, a lot of the other cards in the deck are pretty standard, so I'll just pull out the one-offs to this column here so it's a bit easier to see. Like that. So in terms of the list, 3 Ash Barrens, 4 Azorius Chancery, 1 Idyllic Beachfront, 1 Mortuary Mire, 8 islands, 2 plains. They don't have to be snow. I wasn't playing snow in paper. This is just whatever I have saved on Magic Online. It doesn't make a difference. 2 Ephemerate, 3 God-Pharaoh's Faithful, 4 Brainstorm, 4 Sunscape Familiar, 4 Snap, 4 The Modern Age, 3 Deep Analysis, 3 Archaeomancer, 4 Mulldrifter, 3 Lorien Revealed and into the one-ofs, 1 Ghostly Flicker, 1 Prohibit, 1 Merchant Scroll, 1 Memory Lapse, 1 Piracy Charm, 1 Meeting of Minds, and 1 Murmuring Mystic. In the sideboard, 4 Loyal Sentry, 1 Last Breath, 1 Circle of Protection Blue, 1 Exclude, and 4 Hydroblast, 4 Dust to Dust. Yeah, so the deck is really strong. I played Tron a lot previously in paper and Pauper when I'm trying to play in competitive events. This feels a little bit closer to playing normal Magic, where you try and just cast your sort of efficient cards on curve, which the Tron deck's not really doing at all. It's kind of a different animal altogether. So it just feels a bit nicer to play. And maybe the matchups are a little bit less polarized as well than Tron, but Tron has a pretty solid matchup spread versus most things as well, so maybe that's not too much of a concern either. Just a few weird things about the list, like the Piracy Charm. I wanted this to be a Destroy Evil, but I couldn't find one before the event, so I just played one of these instead. And actually this probably ended up being better, to be honest. There were quite a few matchups where I used it to grind down my opponent's hand, especially versus Turbo Fog, where Destroy Evil just would have been totally useless. So yeah, Piracy Charm wasn't bad at all, but it was supposed to be a Destroy Evil. That's the list I probably would have played. if I had all the cards. And then in the sideboard, I think Circle of Protection Blue was supposed to be inside out, but that one I do own, but I couldn't find it. I need to sort my cards a bit better so I know where all my stuff is. But yeah, I couldn't find my inside out, so I just played this Cop Blue instead. There were at least like one or two other Familiars players there in this tournament, so inside out wouldn't have been a bad choice, but luckily I didn't pair against any matchup where I would have needed it anyway. And it's kind of narrow, like you have the Last Breath, which does like a similar thing, but inside out's just good because obviously it draws a card and you can find it off the Merchant Scroll. But apart from those two things, like this list, especially the main deck, is like very close to what I think is really good. Like it's just this one last slot that's a little bit uncertain. Like I would absolutely keep playing the Murmuring Mystic, Meeting of Minds, Memory Lapse, Prohibit. All of these one-offs are really good. One thing that I've seen as like a consideration is cutting one Archaeomancer for Step Through. It's like an expensive sorcery that bounces two creatures and it has wizard cycling. So you can find your Archaeomancer with it, which is really good because you can cycle Step Through, get Archaeomancer, play Archaeomancer, get the Step Through back, then cycle the Step Through, get your other Archaeomancer. Now you have double Archaeomancer. You can do the flicker combo. So that's kind of appealing. And with wizard cycling, you can get Murmuring Mystic. You can get these if you need to gain some more life. So it's a little bit flexible. But just having a higher density of actual Archaeomancer in your deck is not that bad either. Obviously, it means you can just cast it straight away without having to pay 2 mana to search for it first, and it gives you a little bit more resilience versus like Grave Hate and getting grinded out of the game when you have the 3 actual Archaeomancers in your deck, which is like a weird thing to think about in Magic a lot of the time, but in Pauper it can come up quite a bit, especially after sideboarding. So yeah, just the Piracy Charm is like the weird card. The thing is that like God-Pharaoh's Faithful is a really polarizing card too. Like I think I boarded this out in every single matchup that I played, but maybe you just have to play it main deck because the red decks are so much of the format. Like I think the mono red was the most popular deck at this event. I was just lucky not to get paired into it. Well, not necessarily lucky because I mean I don't think the matchup is bad at all. It's probably favored for this deck, to be honest. But yeah, it just so happened that I never got paired against it. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is just like a really nice healing salve. So there's a bunch of matchups where it's pretty useless. But like maybe red is just such a big part of the format that you have to sort of play it anyway, especially when you have like a 3 deep analysis main deck that's bolting yourself to flash it back. Like having some life gain in your main deck is never going to be that bad. Then in terms of the sideboard, you probably have to play like about 4 Hydroblasts, so I'm not too worried about that. Dust to Dust, nobody was playing any deck where 4 Dust to Dust was that necessary, so maybe this is too many. Like if Grixis Affinity is really popular again after the Glitter's ban, then maybe you want 3 or 4 of this. That wasn't the case at this tournament, so I have to see how the metagame shakes out. But yeah, 4 of these was overkill in my experience. 1 Exclude is really good. You can Merchant Scroll for it, and boarding into more counterspells is good versus mid-range decks. This was fine. 4 Loyal Sentries and the Circle of Protection might be overkill versus the blue decks, but Circle of Protection slightly better versus Fairies, and Loyal Sentry slightly better versus Tolarian Terror, maybe, so hard to say. Last Breath's just pretty good catch-all card. Yeah, also versus the like more mid-rangier fair decks, just having an actual removal spell is pretty good. So yeah. So yeah, possibly you wouldn't want to play all 4 of these, possibly you wouldn't want to play all four of these. Maybe if you have a different sideboard plan, you don't want to play like any of these. But the way this deck is built, I think it struggles versus the mono blue Terra deck quite a lot. Like, this is pretty bad against it because all their creatures just can be recast for cheap anyway, and it's hard to target Lorien Terra with this. You have to pay for the ward. Like, your opponent's creatures are so big that like this can't block. The life gain is not enough to outrace the damage. And yeah, they are like pretty good at disrupting all of your setup to combo as well. So everything's a little bit of a struggle. So Loyal Sentry in that matchup helps a lot because it only costs 1 mana. It's not very good for them if they bounce it. You can just cheaply replay it again. It kills Lorien Terra without having to pay for the ward. And if you want, you can block and then flicker or snap. And it will still kill their creature and your sentry will stick around. So yeah, pretty good in that matchup. But again, I'm not 100% sure of the sideboard mapping, like versus the Pauper meta in general. Like, I'm not 100% sure what sideboard I want, but something close to this main deck is definitely very strong. So in the tournament itself, I played against like blue-white Gates in round 1 with the red sideboard splash. I won that matchup pretty handily, 2-0. Like, game 1 they just had too many clunky cards, and game 2 I just grind them out through their Hydroblast and stuff. I just have too much card draw, like with the deep analysis flashback and all that. So pretty easy matchup. Game 2, or round 2, sorry, played against Turbo Fog. So I won that matchup 1-0-1. So the Turbo Fog games, as usually they go pretty long. There was like a spot in the game where my opponent felt like a bit ahead overall, but I think they just like bricked on too many draw steps. They didn't find enough card draw spells to sort of keep their foot on the gas and like dig towards their win con, and that gave me like the few turns I needed to set up the flicker loop. And then we timed out in game 2 because it takes so long to play. But like the board state was pretty ahead. Like I had we both had a Murmuring Mystic, but I had Ghostly Flicker Archaeomancer out, so I could make like quite a lot of birds every turn, and that was probably going to overwhelm the opponent pretty quickly if the game continued. So yeah, that was the round 2 versus Turbo Fog. Round 3 I played against Blue-Black Furies. Again, pretty uneventful match. Like, I don't even really remember the details of the game. I know that I had a Loyal Sentry on the board in game 2, which was like blocking out my opponent's Gurmag Angler, stopping it from attacking, so that's pretty nice. But yeah, just like draw enough cards and make sure they don't stick the Thorn of the Black Rose, and then it's not really that hard of a matchup. And last round against Jeskai Ephemerate. So again, like versus all these fair interactive decks, Familiar's usually quite strong because you just outvalue them really easily. Like, it's so hard for opponents to play through all of this card advantage. And like at the end of the day, you're just like a much better Ephemerate deck than they are. So yeah, like they can sort of cheese you if you like expose your Azorius Chancery to a wildfire in a weird spot, and then they can like tempo you out if they can set up their Archaeomancer Ephemerate before you can stabilize, which is a thing that can kind of happen, right? Because they have like better ramp than you with the Ephem and stuff. I mean, sorry, with the wildfire. And the other thing I sort of discovered is that this 75 doesn't do a very good job of dealing with your opponent's Lorien Revealed, because you can't prohibit it, you can't exclude it, and you can memory lapse it, but then they just top deck it again for the next turn. So in a like grindy game, in like a top decking situation, that's a bit awkward. You can like Piracy Charm it out of their hand in their draw step if they're top decking, which is pretty funny, but that doesn't always line up. So maybe this deck wants like a negate or something in the 75. To be honest, it probably does. Um, that's definitely probably a card that you should find space for going forward. But yeah, so I beat the Jeskai Ephemerate player 2-0 before the top 8, and then in top 8 I beat him 2-0 again. And it was like a really, really weird, like long game. Like I won the game with no cards in my library. Like attacking him for like, it wasn't exact damage, it was like a little bit over exact damage, but it was definitely my last turn of the game. Um, like I thought my last card in my deck was an Archaeomancer, but I miscounted it, and it was like a Mulldrifter that was useless because obviously you can't cast a Mulldrifter with no cards in your library. So yeah, I just so happened to have like exactly the right number of creatures that I could kill that turn anyway. But I thought I was safe. I thought I could like play Archaeomancer, get the flicker back, start flickering my Mortuary Mire, because he countered the Ghostly Flicker on the second to last turn. So I was like, oh, no problem, we'll just top deck this last card of my deck, Archaeomancer, and start flickering Mortuary Mire, and then I won't deck out. But then I actually top decked the Mulldrifter, and I was like, oh damn, do I lose? But no, I had enough bird tokens and stuff that actually I just could win that turn anyway, so it didn't matter. But yeah, that game was super long. Um, if I had a negate in my 75, it would have gone a bit easier. So yeah, that's the end of the tournament basically. Yeah, it's a really, really strong deck in Pauper. Really fun, has lots to play to it. Yeah, going forward, so in the new set, Modern Horizons 3, there's already been a card spoiled that's quite good for this deck. It's called, I think, Thraben Charm. So it's a 1 white instant. So like same mana cost, same type as Last Breath or Destroy Evil. It has 3 modes. The first mode is exile target player's graveyard. The second mode is destroy target enchantment. The third mode is you deal damage to target creature equal to double the number of creatures you control, I think. So that's really nice because graveyard, a little bit of graveyard hate is pretty interesting and quite nice to have in a lot of matchups. Destroy enchantment is also strong, like just like on Destroy Evil, Destroy enchantment comes up quite a bit. And then the third mode, deal damage to target creature equal to double the number of creatures you control. Like usually this deck has at least a few creatures floating around, right? You have these, you have this. Familiar as a creature, so like you should at least have like 2 to 3 creatures in a lot of situations, which means that spell's dealing like 4 to 6 damage, which basically kills most of the stuff in Pauper that you care about. Like you have Last Breath in the deck to kill small creatures, and you have Destroy Evil. Well, I wanted to have a Destroy Evil. You have Destroy Evil in the deck, which can kill big creatures. But this new card kills like all sorts of creatures, right? As long as you have creatures, you can kill any kind of creature, which is really strong. So that would probably get the main deck spot of this Piracy Charm. You'd rather have the Thraben Charm. And then once you have Thraben Charm available, like you probably don't need to play Last Breath anymore. You can swap that for something else. Yeah, so really good card. I'm probably happy to play that in the main deck once that Modern Horizons 3 comes out. But yeah, that is the end of the video. I don't know if anybody's interested in doing like pack opening streams with the like prize packs from this event. That's pretty low effort content. I don't think people care about that. But yeah, if you have any questions about this list, about Pauper, about MTG or Flesh and Blood or whatever, just let me know down in the comments. But yeah, I think this deck is really good. Can definitely recommend familiars in Pauper going forward. And to be honest, I might not play this deck in the next version of this tournament because the Turbo Fog guy is always there. And it's so frustrating having to play like the Ghostly Flicker versus Turbo Fog matchup. Like, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build this deck and I'm gonna build Walls combo, and like if the Turbo Fog player is there, I'm gonna play Walls combo. Otherwise, I'm probably gonna run this back. But yeah, if my next video is on Walls combo and Pauper, then you know what happens. um, yeah, that's all for today. This has been Live ITCG signing out.